Hey guys, it's Siobhan. So I decided I was going to do a little vlog on some of my paranormal experiences, and I did one already. It was in Greece, my Cretan ghost experience, which I will link here. I've been feeling very inspired by watching Graveyard Girl. Her channel is just fantastic. I think she's an awesome person and I have so much in common with her. I always feel inspired to do this video whenever I watch one of hers. And I actually wanted to do it before Halloween and just didn't have time, so I'm doing it now. Better late than never. And if you feel inspired, I'd love to hear your story. The last time I put a video up like this, I got a lot of written stories, which was awesome and so cool. But it would be neat to see a video response too, or like a video recording of your experience, if you feel comfortable. I need to give you a little bit of a background on who I am and where I was coming from as these things started to happen to me, just so that you can understand and the stories will make sense. I am 28, I am from New York City. I have a daughter. She was conceived in February of 2007. I found out in March that I was going to be a mom, and in November I had my daughter. And actually during that time my maternal grandmother passed away. She died on May 7th. And it was sort of one of the harder things to go through while I was pregnant, because she was the matriarch of my mother's side of the family, and she just kind of was like the glue that kept us all together. And she had this very special way of making all of her grandchildren and children feel as though they were her personal favorites. She was a huge part of my childhood, and I remember actually the last conversation that I had with her, she was in the hospital, she was having a pacemaker changed or something was going on with her pacemaker, but it was routine, it wasn't supposed to be fatal. And I told her over the phone that I was pregnant, and she was concerned about my health, but she never told me not to do it. In fact, she told the nurses that she had to stick around because she was going to have a great grandbaby in November, and she needed to see her. And she said her before we knew that Fanula was a her, so I'm just saying that's pretty cool. So the other thing I should mention is that my husband and I, we were living in this really tiny New York City studio apartment on 69th Street and 2nd Avenue right as Fanula was born. And we'd been there for about 2 years. It had been fine for a couple. I mean, it was really tight, but hey, we were living in Manhattan, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, you gotta pick and choose. You either have a big, huge living space or you live in the city. And I'd rather live in the city than go anywhere else, so I deal with the small spaces. When Finn was 4 months old, my husband found a new job and we moved to the Upper West Side. We moved to 79th Street and Riverside Drive, which was awesome. I mean, it was still a small apartment, but it was bigger in the sense that it was 1.5 bedroom. And I say half bedroom because it was a bedroom, and then there was this sort of large closet that we turned into a small room for Fanula. And she was a baby, so she didn't really need a whole lot of room. And we thought, okay, well, we can live here for a while because, you know, it's comfortable enough, and we loved the neighborhood. I'm a West Sider originally. I'm from Greenwich Village on the west side. And after having been on the Upper East Side for 2 years and not really particularly liking the neighborhood I'd been in, I was thrilled to be going home. And of course, Riverside Drive Park was right across the street from us. We were an avenue, one avenue away from Broadway, which was bursting with life and shops and just kids and families. It was just a great neighborhood, and I miss it so much. We moved back to the Upper East Side in June, and that is where I am right now. It's okay, I'm getting used to it, but that's not really the point of this video. It's kind of tell you about my ghost stories. All of them have happened or happened in the West Side apartment. So my first story has to do with Fanula's baby bottles. If you aren't a parent and you don't really know, taking care of a newborn or a small infant is really exhausting in the sense that you constantly have to feed them. And when that happens and you're sleep deprived, you come up with all these creative ways to do as little as possible and to be asleep while you're doing it, if you can be. That way you don't miss out on all of the normal REM that most regular folk take for granted. So we would make the bottles before bedtime. We'd put them in the fridge, and anytime she cried during the night, one of us would get up, take a bottle out, and bring it to her. And we would prop it up on the pillow next to her face, and she'd just turn her head and drink the milk and kind of fall asleep. Most of the time she'd finish all of the milk, but sometimes she would actually leave some of it in the bottle, and she'd spit it out when she was finished, and it would drip into the mattress. And of course that will be uncomfortable for anybody to sleep on a wet mattress. So from time to time my husband would come back, or my husband or myself would come back into the bedroom, take the bottle out and put it on the dresser because we were generally too tired to walk that extra 5 feet to the kitchen and put it in the sink. Yeah, another lazy parent thing. And that was when I started to notice that the bottles were being taken out of the crib before Garrett and I were able to get into the bedroom to do so. And at first I kind of thought my husband was playing a trick on me, but then it sort of seemed like that couldn't be possible since it was happening when he wasn't in the apartment as well. And yeah, I just kind of didn't frighten me, it just sort of made me think that it was my grandmother, you know, kind of just being helpful. Story 2. The man that lived in the apartment before us, he'd been a bachelor, didn't have a family, so he had kind of remodeled bits and pieces of the apartment just to sort of fit his lifestyle. And one of the rooms that he did was the bathroom. He completely and totally knocked out the tub and built this enormous stand-up shower, which was really cool, but not very convenient for a family that was coming in after him. So we had to buy one of those plastic bassinet bathtubs. We got it from Toys R Us, and my routine would be to put the basin in the bottom of the stand-up shower, fill it with water, bathe the baby, take her in a towel to my room, put her on my bed, change her dresser and all that, and then come back into the bathroom, empty the tub, lean it against the wall so that I would have room to take a shower if I needed to, and put all the soaps and shampoos away on the shelf that was in the shower. So one night I went through my normal motions of doing this. My husband was out. I can't remember if he was with a friend or at a game or with family. I can't recall. And I went into my bedroom with my daughter, got her dressed, brushed her hair, put her in her little bouncy chair, and then went back into the bathroom to complete the rest of my routine. And it had been completed for me. All the shampoos and soaps had been put away, and the water had been emptied, and the tub was leaning against the wall, just like I usually do it. The funny thing is that I didn't hear anything while I was changing Fanula, and that was really unusual to me as well, just kind of because the apartment is so small and all the doors had been left open. The door to the bedroom, the door to the bathroom, even the door to the living room, everything was like quiet and still, and yeah, I just didn't hear anything. It didn't really frighten me as much as it confused me. I didn't know what to make of it. I think I remember going out for a walk with the dog afterwards and just kind of like, what happened? How is that possible? And my husband didn't believe me on that one, but it did happen to me. So story 3. Christmas time, my daughter is a year old, her first Christmas, and my dog starts to actually string. Starting at the beginning, actually the end of November, beginning of December, he refused to come into the living room at all, and always had the tail between his legs, and I'd have to drag him out of the apartment for a walk, and then once we got outside he'd be okay, but then I'd have to actually drag him back into the apartment. So he hated leaving and he hated coming back. It was really weird. Usually you'd think it'd be one or the other. At the same time, I started to notice that there were cold spots all over my apartment, and yeah, that was sort of creepy too. I'd stand in front of the bathroom mirror and I would fix my hair in the morning, and I'd see what looked like cigarette smoke go past me from behind, like behind my head, sort of down the hallway. And that and my daughter, my little 1-year-old, she was making noise and moving around, but she wasn't quite walking. But I noticed that she was sort of sitting, like wherever I'd put her in her playpen or something, she'd sit and look up and start talking and giggling as though she were seeing someone and having a conversation, and I don't know. You know, that can be easily misread. A lot of little kids, they do that. They sort of look off into space. They're learning how to focus their eyes. So the only reason I thought that was strange was because my dog was acting so weird. Like, he's never like that at all. Before Christmas, I decided I was going to do something that I'd read about in books and tell the spirit or whatever in my apartment to leave and to not come back ever. And about 48 hours after I did that, Murphy was back to his regular self, and Fanula kind of stopped with the blah 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 at whatever I couldn't see. So that was kind of early. Story 4. So when you are a new parent, you will find that you will have many moments when you just want to no matter how much you love your spouse, kind of strangle them. And it's really complicated learning how to adjust to being someone new and, you know, having to be responsible for a family. And my husband and I were going through this. You know, I was a stay-at-home mom. I was home all day with this little kid. When he walked in the door from work, I just wanted to hand her off and go and have a break myself. But he didn't feel like it was fair then because he was working and then he was taking care of the baby and So the two of us were having problems trying to figure out how to balance our schedule and our like personal time to ourselves. And on this particular evening, he just went to bed. It was 9 o'clock in the evening, didn't really even ask me how my day was, and we'd been going through a couple of days like that, just went to bed. So I was furious, and I was trying not to show it though, because of course I was taking care of little Fanula at the same time, and I had her propped up in a chair, I guess the baby chair, and I was feeding her mushy carrots, and he was in bed. Our apartment, like I said, was really small. I'm going to try and show you. This was our bedroom, this was our kitchen, and Fanula's little bedroom was here, the bathroom was here, the foyer to get in to the apartment with the entrance from the lobby was here, and then of course we had like this weird little room that we used as like a living room, so it was kind of like a railroad apartment, I guess. And as I was feeding her, I could look straight into the bedroom and see that he was in bed, and that's kind of important for this story. So the door to the bedroom was open, and next to the door we had this cabinet. And it was kind of meant for a TV, it had the opening and shut doors, but we used it for our computer at that time. And that evening, Garrett had left the doors to the cabinet open. So, as I said, I was feeding the baby, kind of just trying to calm down, trying not to feel so angry. And all of a sudden, the bedroom door slammed. And I'm not talking about like the kind of like slam like when you close a door. This is the kind of slam that you would do if you were angry at your boyfriend, your girlfriend, like that very passionate slam where doof, and the whole room kind of shakes for a moment. Well, the weird thing is that it slammed and it caught on the door of the cabinet because it had been left open. So it opened up again and then slammed it just as hard, but this time it went past the cabinet door and actually closed. And just as that was happening, this like whoosh of air went right past me and Fanula in the kitchen towards the living room. So of course I jump up and I think, let me find out where the dog is, even though I know that I hadn't seen him come out of the bedroom. And he was on the opposite side of the apartment, on the couch asleep. And while this had been happening, I had seen Garrett in bed. And the only other little animal that we had at the time was a little cat who's like this big. She weighs like 8 pounds. There's no way she could have slammed the door with that much force. That one didn't really frighten me as much as it startled me, and again I kind of chalked that up to being my grandmother, just because if she had been alive and she'd been in the apartment, she was very frank and to the point and would have said to Garrett, get up off your ass and help your wife. And that's just, she wouldn't have even taken into account that that might have come across as being rude and that he might decide that he didn't like her. She didn't care. She was fiercely protective of all of her children and grandchildren and would have done just about anything to help them, make their lives easier, and it just seemed like her. I don't know, it did. So again, yeah, it did make me kind of jump a little bit, but like didn't really frighten me in that way. And one thing that Garrett did say about the whole thing was that right before it happened, he felt as though the bed had been shaking. So I don't know what that means exactly, but yeah. Story of 5, and I think this is kind of when they start to get a little bit more interesting or a little bit more scary. I have always been a huge fan of the paranormal. I have always wanted to do like professional ghost hunting. And unfortunately, this kind of a subject is sort of 50-50. Either you believe or you don't, and for whatever reason, I have more non-believers in my life than I do have believers. So I was thrilled when I found out that my sister-in-law and her boyfriend were really into the idea of ghost hunting and enjoyed the paranormal and horror and that like entire genre. And yeah, we got it into our head that we were going to start doing ghost hunting. And Garrett was just coming along for the ride, so there would be 2 couples, it would be even. And one night, they decided to come over for dinner and a Ouija board session. So I know a lot of you would probably say, Siobhan, that's so stupid, don't do Ouija, you're really going to regret it. And I tend to agree with you, but at the same time I can't help but be really curious about it. Curious yet cautious, because I really do believe, and I think that if you piss off spirits, or you make them angry, or you're just rude, they're going to do things to you that you don't want them to do. And kind of that's sort of what happened. So after a couple of beers, we were having a really unlucky session, by the way, and after a couple of beers, they all started to joke around about wanting to contact a demon and like see how entertaining that could be. I immediately took my hands off the board, even though the whole mood of the room was really lighthearted and they were all joking around like, this isn't real, this isn't going to happen. I just decided that I felt safer taking my hands off the board, especially since my little 3-year-old was down the hall sleeping in bed. For whatever reason, it started to spell out really strongly A-Z, A-Z, A-Z. And we just kind of thought that it didn't make any sense and whatever, it seemed a little silly, and we lost interest, or they lost interest, and we just started hanging out, and shortly thereafter they went home. So I think it was the next time I saw Sharon that she told me that she actually looked up in a demonology book what AZ could have represented, and it turns out there's a demon AZ. Yeah. I don't want to hear about it, you guys. I didn't want to hear about it from her. I don't know that much about it. I haven't done any research about it. I don't even want to see explanations about it in the comments section below. No thank you. Really, I am so much more happy being ignorant on the subject of this. So I'm just telling you the story and asking you very nicely not to tell me anything about AZ, because I just really don't want to know. A few nights after I spoke to her about this, again, we were lying in bed, Garrett and I, and Fanula was with us actually, and we were watching TV, and Garrett was really pissy about it that night because he wanted to go to sleep. But generally what happens is that he watches TV in bed and I want to sleep, and he won't turn off the TV, so the roles were reversed, and I think he was kind of pissed off about it, and he took a pillow, got really angry, and walked down the hall to the living room to sleep on the couch. 45 minutes after he left me to go into the living room, he came back into the bedroom and asked if he could stay in bed with me. So something must have bugged him, and I sat up, I looked at him, and he told me that something had walked into the room, had sat on him, put all its weight on his face, his chest, his stomach, and his upper legs, had held him down on the couch, made it difficult for him to breathe, and then growled and hissed in his ear. And he said this went on for about 30 to 60 seconds, and he was just so terrified, like he felt like he needed to be next to somebody else, or just didn't want to be alone in general. So I went through the motions of saying the Lord's Prayer. It's something that I do a lot anyway, and it didn't seem to bother me any. Like, you know, I didn't hear anything for the rest of the night, but he was really, really nervous. And for him to have swallowed his pride after an argument to come back into the bedroom and be next to me, something must have happened, whether it was like sleep paralysis or an actual kind of spirit. Really. Story 6. So we had 2 entrances in and out of our apartment. The first one was at the front, and you'd come in through the lobby, and the second one had the back door leading into our living room, which is where we had held the seance, and or Ouija board session, I should say. And it had, like when you open the door, it had these steps that led up onto the street. And actually, that back door was kind of one of the scarier parts of the apartment, and really frightened us for the entirety of the 3 years that we lived there. Just because it was a really flimsy door, there was no security camera, and we lived on 79th Street and Riverside Drive, which is pretty much abandoned and quiet at night, especially in the winter. And during the summer and spring months, the people that would go to the Boat Basin Cafe, which is this huge outdoor restaurant right on the river on 79th Street where we lived, they'd come back uptown, like I guess not uptown, but like I guess towards the east side to where all the life was on Broadway, and they'd walk past our building. People would climb over the fence sometimes and would rattle the doorknob. We'd hear voices outside of people urinating there, or sometimes the light would switch on or something. Something would happen and it would wake us up in the middle of the night, and we were always really frightened that somebody would eventually break into our apartment, and it was just something that we were constantly aware of. So on this particular evening, again, a couple weeks after this initial Ouija board session, my daughter refused to go to bed. Garrett and I were lying there awake, hoping that she would get back into her bed and behave herself. We had both gotten up and put her down a couple of times, and she was just being very, very fussy and naughty this night. And I think we actually both had someplace to be the next morning, and so this was really inconvenient, and we were just so tired and pissed about it, we decided that we were going to just let her do what she needed to do while we slept. I mean, like, that's how exasperated we were. She was going up and down the hallway, running up and down, and going into the living room, even though the lights were off, because she knew where her toys were that she'd left that evening. And I guess it probably, like, within 15 or 20 minutes of this having started with her, we heard this huge, loud male voice coming from our living room, screaming, "What are you doing in here?" Screaming at her. We both sat up, like, immediately, and I mean, like, I can't even tell you, like, the panic that I felt in my stomach, just like, oh my god. Thinking that somebody had broken in. Fanula comes like a bat out of hell down the hallway, screaming and crying. I mean, like, so frightened that her whole body is shaking. And she jumps right into bed with us and climbs right under the covers. And Garrett jumps up to the kitchen, he gets one of those butcher knives, and we flick on all the lights and we start searching our apartment to see what had happened. All the doors were secure, all the windows were secure, everything was in its place. It was just kind of a mystery. And we never were able to figure that one out, but that one frightened me a lot. Story 7. This isn't really so much a story as it is something that started to happen after this particular incident, after story 6. My daughter, I guess I wasn't really paying attention, but a lot of times I'd watch these sort of ghost documentaries on my YouTube channel while I'd be making dinner. I'd like prop up the laptop and I'd be cooking and I'd be listening. And I guess, you know, children are really, really perceptive and they pay attention when you don't think that they're paying attention, so I can't be sure exactly how she knew the word ghost, but she did. And she started to say, "Mommy, there's a ghost. There's a ghost in my closet. There's a ghost in your room. There's a ghost in the bathroom." And of course Garrett and I would stop and we would say, "Okay, well, is it a boy? Is it a girl? Is it a mommy? Is it a daddy? What color is their hair? Are they tall? Are they short? Do you know their name?" And she'd answer, but you know, she's a baby, so you can't really take what she was saying very literally, except that she started to have night terrors, and she'd wake up in the middle of the night screaming, and not just screaming because she was alone in her room, just like screaming as though someone had scared the shit out of her. And she always would say, "Mommy, the ghost said boo." And every time she would tell me that, I just would like feel myself start to do this. So I went I went through all of my stuff and I started to put all of my religious icons that I had purchased in the Greek market in the Plaka, and I also had all these beautiful I guess evil eyes, and the idea behind them is that you hang them up in different rooms and like they ward off bad energy, bad spirits. And again, I would from time to time walk from room to room and I'd say, "Get out, this is my house." And I felt ridiculous doing that, but I didn't know what else to do, kind of. And this went on for weeks, if not months, where Fanula from time to time, literally once or twice a week, she would wake up screaming, saying, "The ghost said boo." Like, I don't even know how she could have learned that. Like, I don't know. Story 8. And this is kind of the last story that I'm going to tell in this video. It's also kind of, I guess, the scariest one. My daughter, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night. My daughter wouldn't go to bed, but we weren't like kind of freaking out about it just because it was Saturday, we didn't have anywhere to be, and she wasn't in school, so we weren't on the set schedule. However, I think it was like around 1 o'clock in the morning where we were just kind of like, "Go to bed, Fanula," and she kept getting up, wouldn't stay in her bed. Finally, Daddy yelled at her a little bit, and I guess Daddy's a little bit more intimidating than Mommy, and she stayed in her bed. Although she was awake and we could hear her talking. So, and of course Garrett wasn't helping because he too was talking, and our apartment was so small that sound just like carries everywhere. I was using the toilet, and we kind of have this open door policy in our house. I never get privacy. I literally can't ever go anywhere in any of the rooms in my apartment without somebody following me, whether it's the cat, the dog, the baby, or the husband. I'm never alone. I mean, even when I'm recording these videos for you guys, they're right outside the door, listening, banging, making noise, driving me insane. Like, they always are. And so my husband on this night, we just put the baby down, he kind of yelled at her, and she was staying in her room, and I was using the toilet. He barges in on me because he's got some thought in his head that he needs to tell me this very second while I was in the middle of peeing. And he's kind of looking down at me because of course I'm sitting, and he's got his hands on the doorframe like this. And in the middle of his thought, I can't even remember what he was saying because I probably tuned him completely and totally out because, like I said, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. But he stops speaking and he's looking down the hallway with like this sheer like, I don't know, it was like complete and total confusion, I guess. Like totally confounded by what he was looking at. And I thought to myself, oh no, what did she do? Because she had just gotten these new markers and I thought she had scribbled all over the wall or something. He dashes down the hallway and I'm right behind him at this point because I'm thinking, oh my god, she's ruined something. But when we get to her bedroom, which is only like a couple of feet actually from the bathroom, she's standing on top of her bed, which isn't really unusual to me. Garrett said though that she was peeking her head out from her door of her room. She was kind of looking out. And that's not so weird either, except that she's like 3 feet and she was at the top of the door frame and not where her head should have been. There is no furniture, or there was no furniture in her room for her to climb. Nothing. Nothing at all. There was nothing by the door. There was nothing by the other side of the door. She could not have moved anything over to the door to get to the top of the door frame. It's like impossible. And she had a big grin on her face. She was really excited about it, almost like, you know, I did something naughty with, or like, I guess the grin that a child might have if you pick them up and spin them around. Yeah. So it was kind of like somebody had held her, let her stick her head out and see where her daddy was, and then heard Garrett, turned around, and just placed her on her bed. We checked her, and she did in fact have marks on her side. She had a finger mark right here on her ribs that looked as though it was from a thumb, because obviously this is how you would pick a small child up. Yeah, that was the worst one. And I hope that doesn't happen again, obviously. In the months after that happened, we didn't really play with the Ouija board. We didn't really talk about ghosts for a long time. I know that right before we moved, we did have a couple of sessions again, and I started to get back into it. But by that point, whatever we had thought was in our apartment was either gone or had moved on. I don't know, or maybe it was just sleeping and waiting. But luckily Garrett actually found a new job and we moved again, and we're in our new apartment now. I haven't seen anything. My daughter has said that she has, like there's a ghost in my room, kind of the same thing, but it's been very, very once in a blue. And doesn't seem to be all that scary, to her at least, which is good. My husband said the other night that he heard shuffling, like someone walking around in our kitchen, and someone said I'm thirsty and was really raspy, and took a glass and filled it with water from our water cooler. And he even heard the gloop, gloop, gloop noise of the water kind of emptying from the filter. Yeah. He was pretty scared. Think about things like that. I've never actually seen the apparition of a ghost. I think I would be pretty shaken up, but at the same time incredibly fascinated. I'd want to go to it and say, I'm Siobhan, who are you? Tell me about your life. Like, that's sort of how I feel about it. Although I'm saying this, having never experienced it, I probably would run from it screaming, especially if it tried to touch me, as I did in Greece. In my previous video, I mentioned how I ran from the hotel room screaming. So yeah, I'm saying all that, but I'm not particularly religious. I don't follow any one religion, but I definitely believe in God, and I guess I'm sort of so arrogant in my belief that like God will protect me. Like I believe it so hard, like nothing is going to happen to me, and I guess believing that sort of protects me in the sense that nothing ever has happen to me, and I've been in places and situations where I've watched things happen to other people, and I've seen it happen to other people, but it never happens to me. And I think it's just because I put this like mental shield around me. I also don't really play into my fear. Like, even when Garrett the other night said he heard someone in the kitchen, like, I felt that panic for a second, kind of like, ugh. But I forced myself to kind of work through that, and you like stand up and turn the lights on and go and look, and he's still kind of huddled under the covers in the bedroom. But yeah, there was nothing there. And I didn't hear anything anyway, but like I was kind of asleep, so I think if I had heard it, I probably would have been a little bit more frightened myself. I don't know. I tend to be more curious about it than frightened. After all, like, ghosts, spirits, they're just people. Like, they're just people. I mean, they're just people. So yeah, I'm sorry that this video is so long. I have a couple other experiences, but I just didn't feel like talking about them today. And if you're interested, I will definitely share that story with you. I really, really want to hear more of your stories. If you'd like to make your own video and leave it as a video response to my video, so that maybe if I leave this as a response to Bunny's videos, then she can see mine, then yours, you know, like that whole chain of video sharing, woo! Or you can write to me. I really liked reading all the written stories too, that was pretty cool. Yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!